The battlefield was quiet now, though the silence was not peaceful. Debris from destroyed ships floated in the void, some still burning from recent blasts. The Torvian system bore the scars of battle, but it had survived. The Kraler fleet, once poised for complete annihilation, had retreated in disarray, leaving the Coalition fleet to regroup and assess the damage. Captain Elena Mercer stood on the bridge of Resolute, her eyes scanning the stars. She had fought many battles across the galaxy, faced countless enemies, and survived situations that seemed impossible. But this one was different. The Kraler Empire had been relentless, a force that crushed all who opposed them. Yet, through courage, skill, and teamwork, the humans had turned what seemed like certain defeat into victory. "Harris," she said quietly, "send status reports to all Coalition units. Let them know what we accomplished today, and remind them of the tactics that worked. Knowledge is power." Lieutenant Harris nodded. "Already prepared, Captain. It's being transmitted to every surviving unit." Across the Coalition fleet, alien pilots and officers moved carefully among the wreckage. Some ships were heavily damaged, others had lost crews, and still others floated like broken ghosts among the stars. Yet despite the losses, morale was high. The humans had changed everything. They had led the fight, inspired courage, and taught the Coalition how to survive against overwhelming odds. Commander Lyra Cathar watched her fleet with a mixture of relief and awe. She had doubted they could survive the Kraler onslaught, had believed defeat was inevitable, but humans had arrived. They had fought, adapted, and led, and in doing so, they had shown the aliens that victory was possible, even when all seemed lost. "They are extraordinary," Jour said softly, his gaze fixed on the humans. "Not just warriors, leaders. They fight with purpose and precision. They inspire even those who were ready to surrender." Lyra nodded. "And they remind us why hope should never be abandoned. Today, humans showed us that courage and skill can overcome even the most impossible odds." On board Resolute, Captain Elena turned to her officers. "We have won today, but the war is far from over. The Kraler Empire will return stronger and more determined, but we have shown that they are not invincible. They can be outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and defeated if we continue to fight together with courage and precision." Her officers nodded. Every human knew the truth of her words. Victory was never guaranteed, but humans thrived on challenges that others feared. They had turned fear into action, doubt into strategy, and hopelessness into hope. Sergeant Malik, back from his boarding mission, debriefed his team. "We accomplished our objectives. The flagship is crippled, enemy officers neutralized, and their fleet is in retreat. No one was left behind, and every action was coordinated. That is how humans fight. That is how we lead." The young alien pilots, who had once been terrified and inexperienced, now gathered around the humans to learn. They wanted to understand the tactics, the precision, and the calm confidence that had turned the tide of battle. Humans did not boast or seek glory. They demonstrated skill, leadership, and courage, and in doing so, became living examples of what was possible. Commander Lyra walked through her command room, observing the changes. Officers who had doubted themselves now spoke confidently. Pilots who had panicked at the first enemy strike now discussed maneuvers they had learned from observing humans. The Coalition fleet was transformed, not just in strength, but in spirit. "They have given us more than victory," Lyra said quietly. "They have given us the tools to survive, to fight, and to believe in ourselves. That is a gift more valuable than any weapon." Far above, the human fleet continued its patrol, watching for signs of the enemy's return. Captain Elena knew the Kraler Empire would not surrender. They never did. But humans were ready. They had faced impossible odds before and had always found a way. Their courage was not reckless, it was calculated. Their skill was unmatched, and their teamwork flawless. Harris, Elena said, prepare for the next engagement. We will continue to support the coalition, but we also need to show them how to defend themselves. Knowledge and experience must be shared. Yes, Captain, Harris replied. The coalition units are ready and eager to learn. In the following days, humans worked closely with the coalition. They repaired ships, trained crews, and shared strategies. Alien soldiers who had once trembled at the thought of battle now practiced maneuvers with confidence. Pilots coordinated strikes with precision, and officers developed contingency plans under human guidance. The Kraler Empire remained a threat, but the coalition was no longer weak or disorganized. They had learned how to fight as one under the leadership and example of human veterans. On the bridge of Resolute, Elena reflected on the events. Humans were not invincible, nor were they perfect. But they had an unyielding spirit, a willingness to act when others faltered, and a capacity to inspire courage in allies. That combination made them formidable, not just in battle, but in every challenge they faced. Captain, Harris said, the coalition leaders have requested a meeting. They want to formally thank humans for their assistance and leadership. Elena nodded. Arrange it. We accept their thanks, but remind them that the fight is not over. Today was a victory, but tomorrow brings new challenges. When the coalition leaders arrived, they spoke with respect and gratitude. Commander Lyra addressed Elena directly. Humans, we owe our survival to you. You arrived when defeat seemed certain and turned the tide. You did not just fight. You led, inspired, and taught us. The galaxy will remember this day. Elena's expression was calm, yet proud. We did what humans do. We fight, we adapt, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves. Today was not about glory. It was about ensuring that hope could survive. That is the true measure of victory. The alien leaders nodded in understanding. They had seen the humans in action, witnessed their courage, and learned from their tactics. They realized that humans were more than soldiers. They were a force that could change the course of war. In the days that followed, humans helped rebuild the fleet and strengthen defenses throughout the Torvian system. Coalition units trained rigorously, adopting human tactics and strategies. They studied the lessons of the veterans, learning that courage, teamwork, and ingenuity were as important as technology or numbers. Captain Elena Mercer watched the progress, with quiet satisfaction. Humans had arrived as saviors, yes, but they had also left a lasting legacy. They had shown that even against overwhelming odds, determination and skill could turn defeat into victory. And they had inspired countless species to fight, not just for survival, but for hope, freedom, and the future. Sergeant Malik looked out over the fleet. We came here to fight, and we did. But more than that, we taught others to fight alongside us. That is the real victory. Elena nodded. Humans do not just win battles, we change the game. And wherever we go, the galaxy learns from our example. That is our legacy. Commander Lyra, watching humans work alongside her officers and soldiers, realized that their presence had forever altered the coalition. They had shown what was possible when courage met skill, when fear was met with determination, and when leadership inspired trust and action. The story of the human veterans would spread across the stars, a legend of hope and heroism. As the human fleet prepared to depart for the next engagement, Elena spoke to her crew. Remember today. Remember what we accomplished and the lives we saved. Humans do not give up. We do not surrender. We fight, we lead, and we inspire. That is who we are, and the galaxy will never forget it. The stars above the Torvian system shimmered in silent witness. In the vast darkness of space, among the wreckage of battle and the weary survivors, hope had returned. Victory had been achieved, not by numbers alone, but by courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit of humans. And so, the veterans prepared for the challenges yet to come, knowing that wherever humans appeared, hope followed, courage spread, and even the most certain defeat could be turned into triumph. The galaxy had learned a vital truth. When humans fought, when humans led, and when humans inspired, no force, no matter how great, could claim victory without a fight. The stars above the Torvian system seemed to hold their breath. The battlefield was chaotic, yet organized in its own deadly rhythm. Human veterans led the coalition fleet with precision, every maneuver calculated, every strike purposeful. The Kraler Empire, shaken by repeated defeats, had regrouped their remaining ships for a final, desperate push. Captain Elena Mercer stood on the bridge of Resolute, her eyes scanning the enemy's movements. She had studied their tactics, predicted their responses, and planned for contingencies. This was the decisive moment, the point where the humans would determine whether the coalition survived or fell. "Harris status report," Elena said. Lieutenant Harris glanced at the holographic displays. Kraler flagship is in position at the center of their remaining fleet. Smaller cruisers form a perimeter around it. Shields are reinforced, weapons active. They are expecting a direct assault. Elena nodded. "Then we will give them something they do not expect. Prepare all squadrons for synchronized strike. Boarding teams ready. Drones deployed for distraction. We move in one precise wave." Across the coalition fleet, Commander Lyra Kethar observed the humans with a mix of awe and apprehension. Alien pilots and officers had never witnessed such coordinated action. The humans did not merely react, they controlled the battlefield. Every move they made inspired confidence in those who followed and fear in those who faced them. "They are remarkable," Jour whispered. "Even against overwhelming numbers, they maintain control. They lead without hesitation." "Indeed," Lyra said softly, "and we follow, because they make victory possible." The Kraler fleet fired first. Energy beams and missiles tore across space, lighting up the darkness with violent brilliance. Several coalition ships were damaged, and the Kraler flagship's weapons focused on the advancing humans. Yet the human veterans moved like shadows, dodging attacks with perfect timing, weaving between debris fields, and coordinating counterattacks with a calm precision that seemed almost impossible. "Deploy drones," Elena ordered. "Use them to jam enemy targeting systems, draw their fire away from the coalition units, keep our allies safe." Drones swarmed the enemy fleet, releasing blinding pulses and interference signals. Kraler gunners fired blindly, their targeting computers confused, while humans guided coalition ships into advantageous positions. A frigate dodged a laser volley, looping behind an asteroid, and fired a barrage that crippled the enemy cruisers. Engines from the Kraler flagship Admiral Krill roared in fury. "Concentrate fire on the humans. Destroy them before they reach the command module." But human tactics were unpredictable. Captain Mercer had anticipated the Kraler moves. Small human squadrons feinted, drawing enemy ships into traps, while larger vessels attacked weak points. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet as shields collapsed and weapon systems failed. Chaos spread among the Kraler ranks, their confidence crumbling. On the ground, so to speak, aboard the Kraler flagship, Sergeant Malik's boarding team had begun their final assault. They moved swiftly through the corridors, disabling automated defenses and taking out isolated enemy soldiers with precision. Every step was calculated, every action designed to disrupt the command center. "Keep moving," Malik whispered into his comms. "We reach the main control hub and disable their systems. Then we get out before they know what hit them." The team worked like clockwork. Plasma cutters sliced through reinforced doors. Magnetic boots kept them anchored to the hull in zero. Gravity and their shields absorbed minor fire from remaining Kraler guards. Each soldier knew their role, and together they moved as a single unit. Meanwhile, human squadrons outside coordinated attacks that made the flagship vulnerable. Lieutenant Reyes targeted the shield generator with a precise strike, causing sparks. to fly across the enemy hull. With shields down, the boarding team's task became easier, and the flagship began to falter. Commander Lyra watched the assault unfold in real time. Alien pilots, inspired by human courage, executed daring maneuvers to strike at the enemy. A young alien fighter pilot dove between enemy ships, disabling a cruiser with a well-placed shot. Lyra felt a rush of pride. Her fleet was learning, growing stronger under human guidance. Inside the flagship, Malik's team reached the main control hub. The door, reinforced and heavily guarded, gave way under coordinated pressure. Humans entered silently, quickly taking control. Panels were overridden, weapons disabled, and communications jammed. The Kralar command officers, panicked and confused, could not respond. Command module compromised, Malik reported. Shields offline, weapons disabled, communications down. The fleet is blind. Good work, Elena replied. Prepare for extraction. We leave no one behind. With the flagship crippled, the remaining Kralar ships floundered. They attempted to retreat, but human squadrons cut off escape routes. Coalition ships, now confident and coordinated, pressed the attack. Each move by the humans amplified the efforts of their allies, turning a desperate fight into a calculated victory. Admiral Krill, realizing his fleet was failing, ordered a full retreat. But disorganized and demoralized, his forces stumbled into ambushes and traps set by humans. Ships collided with debris, engines failed, and energy beams fired at empty space. The Kralar Empire's carefully planned assault had been undone by human ingenuity and relentless courage. Captain Mercer watched calmly as the enemy fell apart. Harris, maintain pressure. Ensure no key units escape. Keep our allies safe. And remember, we are leading, not just fighting. Above, Commander Lyra saw the difference humans made. Alien units, inspired and guided, moved with a confidence they had never known. Morale soared, and even the most hesitant officers acted decisively. Humans had not only changed the outcome of the battle, they had transformed the coalition fleet itself. Sergeant Malik's team completed their mission and returned to their pods. They moved swiftly through the wreckage and debris, linking up with their squadrons. No human had faltered, no one had been left behind. Each soldier knew that courage, skill, and teamwork were as vital as weapons in winning a battle. As the Kralar fleet finally retreated into the void, the battlefield quieted. Coalition ships floated among debris, shields flickering but intact. Alien pilots and officers looked to humans with awe and gratitude. They had witnessed bravery, intelligence, and determination in action, and it had saved them from near-certain defeat. Commander Lyra turned to Jour. Humans are extraordinary. They fight not only with skill but with purpose. They lead, inspire, and change the outcome of war itself. Today, we owe our survival to them. On board Resolute, Elena addressed her crew. This battle is won, but the war continues. Remember what we did today. Remember what humans can achieve when they work together, without fear and with purpose. We fight not for glory, but to protect life and give hope where none exists. Lieutenant Harris smiled. Captain, the coalition is stronger because of us, and they know it. Elena nodded. Yes, and the galaxy will know it. Humans are not just warriors. We are veterans, leaders, and protectors. Wherever we go, hope follows, and defeat is never final. Commander Lyra, still observing from her flagship, reflected on the day. Humans had turned the tide of battle, not by numbers alone, but by courage, strategy, and determination. They had taught her fleet to fight with skill and heart. She realized that the legend of human veterans was no exaggeration. They were a force unlike any other, capable of reshaping the course of war itself. As the coalition celebrated their survival and tended to the wounded, human veterans quietly prepared for what would come next. The Kraler Empire would retaliate, stronger and more ruthless. But humans were ready. They had the courage, the ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit that could turn impossible battles into victories. The galaxy had witnessed a decisive moment. The humans had led, fought, and inspired. And in doing so, they had shown that even the most overwhelming odds could be overcome with determination, skill, and teamwork. The stars above the Torvian system burned on, silent and eternal. But among the fleets below, hope blazed brighter than ever. The veterans had shown the galaxy the truth. Humans were unstoppable when united, fearless in the face of danger, and capable of turning certain defeat into victory. The battlefield was alive with motion. Debris from shattered ships drifted silently in the void, illuminated by the red glow of distant stars. The Kraler Empire, once confident of victory, now found itself in disarray. Their command ships struggled to maintain control over a fleet that no longer followed orders. Somewhere in the chaos, humans moved like ghosts, striking with precision and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Captain Elena Mercer watched from the bridge of Resolute, eyes scanning every display. Her human crew worked with calm efficiency, issuing orders and executing maneuvers with perfect timing. Every squadron had a mission, every ship a purpose. Humans were not just fighting, they were leading. And they were teaching the alien allies to fight in ways they had never imagined. "Status report?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Lieutenant Harris leaned over the console. "Enemy formation is fractured. Coalition. Units are holding their lines better, following our lead. Boarding teams report successful sabotage on multiple Kraler ships. Command modules are offline. Shields on enemy capital ships are unstable." "Good," Elena said. "Prepare for coordinated strikes. We push forward, but carefully. Protect the coalition units. They are learning from us." Across the fleet, Commander Lyra Kethar observed the human maneuvers with amazement. Alien ships, once scattered and demoralized, now moved with a new sense of purpose. They mirrored human tactics, forming protective flanks, anticipating enemy attacks, and exploiting weaknesses. Even the youngest pilots, who had barely survived the first wave, were now executing maneuvers they had never thought possible. "It's incredible," Zor muttered. "They are teaching us. Not just saving us, they are guiding us." Lyra nodded. "Humans are unique. Their instincts, their courage, their willingness to take risks. It inspires even the most hesitant among us. Follow their lead and we may survive this battle intact." Meanwhile, the Kraler fleet was in turmoil. Admiral Kryle's voice crackled over the comms, demanding coordination that no longer existed. Officers argued, ships fired at wrong targets, and panic spread among their ranks. Humans had disrupted their order not through overwhelming force alone, but by dismantling their ability to think collectively. Inside a Kraler destroyer, Lieutenant Vren struggled to issue orders to his crew. Why? Why are we losing control? Every attack fails. Shields down. Engines offline. A nearby officer growled, "It is the humans. They are everywhere. They anticipate our every move." Vren's eyes widened. "Impossible. They are too small in number." Back with the humans, Sergeant Malik's boarding team had completed their mission on the enemy flagship. They had neutralized the command officers, disrupted weapons systems, and left the ship crippled. Malik communicated with Elena through secure channels. "Captain, the flagship is under our control. Temporarily. Enemy morale is collapsing. Boarding teams report multiple smaller ships surrendering." Elena's expression remained calm. "Excellent. Withdraw your teams carefully. We are not here to hold space. We are here to break their will. Return to your pods and link up with our squadrons. Keep pressure on the enemy but minimize unnecessary risk." The human tactics were more than just attacks. They were lessons. Alien pilots began observing, learning, and mimicking human maneuvers. Shields were rotated strategically, weapon volleys synchronized, and ambushes planned with foresight. The Coalition fleet, once scattered and panicked, had transformed into an organized, lethal force. Commander Lyra could hardly contain her astonishment. They make us stronger than we could ever be alone, she whispered. We may actually survive this battle because of them. On the Kraler side, desperation grew. Admiral Krill had never faced an enemy who fought so differently. His tactics, based on intimidation and brute force, were failing. The humans did not fear death. They adapted instantly. They worked together seamlessly, and their allies followed suit. Every Kraler calculation was undermined by human unpredictability. In the midst of battle, human snipers on small ships targeted key enemy officers. One such sniper, Corporal Reyes, spoke calmly into his comms. Target in sight. Shield. Generator on that cruiser is vulnerable. Taking the shot in 3, 2, 1. A silent pulse of energy struck the generator, and the cruiser's shields collapsed. Coalition fighters swooped in, delivering the final blow. Across the battlefield, similar strikes caused a ripple effect of destruction. The Kraler ships could no longer rely on their shields, weapons, or coordination. Elena observed the results. Well done, Reyes. Keep coordinating. We continue to lead the Coalition units forward. The humans' influence extended beyond combat. Alien soldiers and officers inspired by human courage began acting decisively. Ships that had been ready to surrender charged forward. Pilots who had trembled at the first wave now dodged enemy fire and counterattacked with confidence. Even the youngest crew members followed human guidance, performing maneuvers that once seemed impossible. Look at them, Jour said, voice full of awe. They are extraordinary. Even in the face of death, they do not hesitate. They fight not for glory, not for survival alone, but because they believe it can be done. Lyra nodded. This is why humans are feared and respected. Their spirit is contagious. It spreads to anyone who fights alongside them. As the battle raged, human teams continued to infiltrate enemy ships. Sergeant Malik's team had linked up with other boarding squads, sabotaging engines, weapons, and communication arrays. Every action was precise, calculated to maximize enemy confusion and minimize coalition casualties. Above, Elena coordinated the squadrons. She studied the enemy's movements, predicting their attempts to regroup. Harris, flank from the left. Push them toward the nebula. Their sensors will fail, and our drones can do the rest. Yes, Captain. Squadrons are moving now, Harris replied. The maneuver worked perfectly. Kraler ships, blinded by the nebula's interference, collided with debris, fired at empty space, and stumbled into ambushes. Drones disabled engines, and Coalition ships followed, striking weak points. Humans had turned the battlefield into a living trap. In the midst of this chaos, Lyra witnessed something remarkable. A young alien pilot, barely trained and terrified, just hours before executed a daring maneuver taught by observing human tactics. The pilot's fighter slashed through the enemy, taking out a heavily armored cruiser. Lyra felt a surge of hope she had not felt in years. They are teaching us to be more than we are, she whispered. On the human side, Elena remained calm. This is what we do, she said to her officers. We fight, we adapt, and we lead. Every life we save, every enemy we disable brings the galaxy closer to balance. Remember, we are not just fighting for victory, we are teaching courage, strategy, and resilience. As the battle continued, the Kraler fleet faltered. Their formations were broken, morale shattered, and their losses mounting. Human veterans pressed forward, showing no hesitation and inspiring the Coalition to do the same. Admiral Krill, realizing his fleet was collapsing, roared in frustration. Withdraw! Fall back to regroup! but the retreat was disorderly. The humans had trapped key enemy ships in calculated ambushes, leaving them no clear path. Each move by the humans exploited the enemy's mistakes, turning confusion into destruction. By the end of the engagement, the Krayler fleet was in full retreat. Coalition units, battered but intact, floated among wreckage and fires in space. Alien officers and soldiers looked at humans with awe. The veterans had not only saved the fleet, they had changed it. Commander Lyra turned to Jur. "We owe our survival to them," she said quietly. "Humans are not just warriors. They are something more. They give hope when all seems lost. They turn defeat into possibility." Elena Mercer stood on the bridge of Resolute, watching the enemy retreat. Her team was tired, but their spirits were unbroken. Every human had performed perfectly, every risk calculated, and every action designed to protect the coalition while dismantling the enemy. "Harris," she said, "prepare a report for the coalition commanders. Let them know what we learned today. They need to understand how to fight and survive. Knowledge is as powerful as any weapon." "Yes, Captain," Harris replied. The human fleet held position for a moment, observing the retreating Krayler forces. Then, without fanfare, they moved silently to the next point of engagement. Humans were not seeking glory. They were seeking to ensure that the galaxy remembered one thing: when humans fought, hope returned. For the first time in the Torvian system, the Allied forces believed they could survive, and far above, in the silent void, humans prepared for the battles yet to come, confident that their courage, ingenuity, and teamwork could turn even the most impossible fights into victories. The Krayler Empire had never seen anything like the humans. Their fleet, vast and brutal, was designed to crush entire systems without mercy. Yet, in the void near the Torvian system, they now faced a new variable: calculating, precise, and utterly unpredictable. Captain Elena Mercer watched her squadron navigate the debris fields around Varel. Each human vessel moved like a shadow, appearing where the enemy least expected. The ships were smaller than many of the Kraylar warships, but they were faster, more agile, and equipped with systems designed for efficiency, not show. "Status." "Report," Elena said, her voice calm and commanding. Lieutenant Harris glanced at the displays. "All units in position. Enemy formation is splitting. They don't know how to respond." Elena nodded. "Good. Remember, we don't just fight to win. We fight to give our allies hope. Make it count." Meanwhile, in the coalition fleet, Commander A. Lyra Kether was struggling to comprehend the sudden change in the battlefield. Alien ships that had been battered and disorganized were now moving with precision, coordinating attacks and taking advantage of human tactics they could barely understand. "This is impossible," Jur muttered, his eyes fixed on the screen. "They move like one mind, yet each is independent. I've never seen anything like it." "Neither have I," Lyra admitted. She had always believed in courage, in strategy, and in loyalty. But the humans were something more. They seemed untouchable, not because they had better technology, but because they had something else: resolve, instinct, and a refusal to quit. The first Krayler destroyer exploded in a flash of white light, sending smaller ships scattering. Human drones swarmed the wreckage, disabling weapon systems and sabotaging engines. Another squadron swooped in from a different angle, striking the enemy command ship with targeted missiles. From the bridge of the human flagship Resolute, Elena watched every movement carefully. "Harris, send the boarding teams. Priority is the enemy's command module. If we disable it, the rest will falter." "Yes, Captain," Harris replied. "Teams are ready." The boarding teams were elite soldiers, trained for infiltration and sabotage. Each wore reinforced exosuits with magnetic boots, shields, and cutting-edge tools. They moved silently through the void in small pods, navigating debris and enemy, fire with careful precision. Their mission: penetrate the Krayler flagship, eliminate the command officers, and cripple the fleet's coordination. Back in the Coalition fleet, alien pilots could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The Krayler ships had dominated them for years, crushing every resistance with overwhelming force. Now, humans had turned the fight into something almost impossible to predict. Energy beams missed, missiles failed to detonate, and enemy formations broke apart under relentless coordinated pressure. "Look at them," one alien officer whispered to his colleague. "They are fearless. Even when the odds are against them, they don't falter." Another replied, astonished. "I thought the stories were exaggerated." They were not. Human ingenuity was not limited to brute force. Drones deployed to jam. Enemy sensors caused chaos in the Kraylar formation. Humans set traps in asteroid belts, forcing the enemy into narrow channels where ambushes awaited. Every strike, every movement was calculated, yet it seemed spontaneous, like an instinct no machine could replicate. On the enemy flagship, Admiral Krill barked orders in fury. "Target the humans! Concentrate fire! Destroy them before they reach our command module!" But his soldiers hesitated. The humans were not like any enemies they had fought before. They dodged lasers, anticipated attacks, and struck back with precision. Each human move seemed to anticipate the Krayler strategy, unraveling their rigid plans. Inside one of the human boarding pods, Sergeant Malik adjusted his helmet, eyes scanning the enemy ship. "We move on my mark. Remember, fast in, fast out. Disable the systems, and we get out before they know what hit them." His team nodded, muscles tense, hearts steady. They were veterans, trained to survive impossible situations. Each had faced death before and had learned the one rule that guided every mission: adapt or die. The boarding pod slammed against the enemy hull, magnetic clamps securing it in place. Malik and his team cut through the outer hull with plasma tools, entering the dark corridors of the Krayler flagship. Their mission was dangerous. Traps, automated defenses, and enemy soldiers awaited, but failure was not an option. Meanwhile, the human fleet above continued to dominate the space around the Kraylar ships. The enemy tried to regroup, but each attempt was met with counterattacks so swift that it seemed the humans were everywhere at once. Small ships flanked the enemy while larger ones targeted weapon systems. Drones moved like swarms of insects, sabotaging engines and shields. Back on the Coalition flagship, Commander Lyra's disbelief turned into hope. She watched as alien units inspired by the humans rallied. They began following the human formations, attacking with newfound courage and precision. The morale of the Coalition fleet soared. Where moments ago defeat seemed certain, now the tide was slowly turning. "Commander," Jour said, his voice tense, "they are coordinating with us. Our fleet is fighting as one again." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Not as one yet," she said, "but we are closer than we were before. Keep fighting. Do not give up." On board the Krayler flagship, panic was spreading. Admiral Kryle's orders were met with confusion and hesitation. Key officers had been eliminated or incapacitated. Ships moved without coordination, colliding and firing at empty space. The humans were dismantling the fleet not by brute force alone, but by undermining its structure and morale. Malik and his team had reached the command center. Within moments, they disabled communications, rewired critical systems, and neutralized the remaining command officers. The flagship's coordination failed, and chaos rippled through the enemy formation. Above, Captain Elena observed the results. "Status?" she asked. Harris smiled. "Command module is down. Enemy fleet is in disarray. They are retreating." Elena allowed herself a rare nod of satisfaction. "Good. Keep pressure on. Don't let them recover. And remember, rescue our allies where you can. They need to know we fight with them, not just for them." The Coalition fleet, emboldened by human intervention, pressed forward. Alien pilots who had moments ago been ready to surrender now engaged the enemy with renewed courage. Energy beams cut through space. Missiles streaked toward targets, and the sounds of battle filled the void, though for the first time those sounds carried hope instead of despair. Lyra turned to Jur. Prepare messages to the fleet. Tell them to hold formation and follow the humans' lead. If they can guide us, maybe, just maybe, we survive this. Jur's eyes widened. They actually inspire us? They do more than inspire, Lyra said softly. They give us a chance to win. As the Kraler fleet began a hasty retreat, the humans did not give them a chance to regroup. Tactical strikes, ambushes, and targeted destruction made sure the enemy's withdrawal was costly. Every human action was calculated, every risk measured, and every move reinforced why they were feared across the galaxy. By the end of the engagement, the Coalition fleet was battered but intact. Ships floated among debris, shields flickering but operational. Alien pilots and soldiers, exhausted and injured, looked to the humans with awe and gratitude. On board Resolute, Elena addressed her team. This is only the beginning. Today we reminded the galaxy that humans do not surrender. Tomorrow we fight again. But for now, know that you have given hope to thousands. Well done, Harris grinned. Captain, I think we just gave them a miracle they didn't know they needed. Elena smiled faintly. It wasn't a miracle. It was human skill, courage, and teamwork. And the galaxy will remember it. Commander Lyra, watching from her flagship, allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humans were unlike any species she had encountered. They were small in number, but their presence shifted the balance of power. They were fearless, ingenious, and utterly determined. She knew that if humans were present, no battle was truly lost. The stars over the Torvian system burned cold and distant, like silent witnesses to a war that had already claimed countless lives. The Torvian fleet, a coalition of alien species united against the invading Kraler Empire, floated in scattered formation near the gas giant Virel. The ships were battered, engines weak, shields flickering like dying flames. Commander Lyra Kethar stared at the holomap projected in the bridge of her flagship, Eterna's Pride, her mandibles clacking softly in frustration. Signals confirm. It, her second-in-command, a reptilian officer named Zur, rasped, "The Kraler main fleet has broken through the outer defenses. All supply lines are severed. Reinforcements will not arrive in time." Lyra's eyes narrowed. She knew the numbers were against them. The Kraler Empire was relentless. Their warships were more advanced, faster, and more numerous than any fleet the Coalition had ever faced. Even if they held out for a few more hours, the losses would be catastrophic. "Then defeat is inevitable," Lyra said quietly, almost to herself. Across the fleet, alien pilots gritted their teeth and prepared for the next wave of attack. Morale was low. Messages from other allied worlds painted a bleak picture. Cities reduced to rubble, civilians enslaved, and entire fleets wiped out without mercy. Every commander knew that surrender was the only option if no help arrived, and surrender meant annihilation for many species. Yet even in the shadow of despair, a faint glimmer appeared. Far beyond the Coalition's radar range, cloaked behind the radiation belts of Virel, a small fleet moved with precision, human vessels. Sleek, practical, and built not just for war, but for endurance. They cut through the darkness like predators stalking unseen prey. On board the human command ship. Resolute, Captain Elena Mercer scanned the holomap with calm intensity. Her face, lined by years of battle, betrayed nothing. Around her, her officers moved efficiently, voices low and purposeful. Each human in the room was a veteran, tested in countless conflicts across distant sectors. None of them were fresh recruits. All had seen hopeless situations and had learned to survive when all odds were against them. "We have visual on the target fleet," Lieutenant Harris reported. Krayler ships are moving into engagement range with the Torvian Coalition. They expect no resistance beyond what the Coalition can offer. Elena's lips curved into a faint smile. Good. Let's make sure they're very wrong. Meanwhile, in the Coalition's command room, Lyra noticed something unusual on the long-range sensors. A flicker of movement, faint but definite, appeared near the edge of the system. The scanners had difficulty reading it, anomalous signals, patterns unlike anything the Coalition had seen. "Commander," Zor hissed, leaning over the console. "We are detecting a formation. Unknown origin. Could be reinforcements?" Lyra tensed. Reinforcements? She knew it was unlikely. The only forces that could respond were days away. Scan carefully. Identify them. The readings came back, and Lyra froze. Human? Could it be? Stories of humans in the galaxy were often exaggerated. They were said to be brave, even reckless in battle. A single human could supposedly turn the tide of an engagement. She had never believed the tales. Until now. On board Resolute, the humans prepared their ships for war. The Krayler Empire had no idea they were coming. Humans had studied the enemy for weeks, learning their tactics, their strengths, and their weaknesses. The key, Elena knew, was timing and precision. Strike too early, and the enemy would scatter. Strike too late, and the Coalition would be lost. "Ready teams for boarding and direct strike?" Elena ordered. "Deploy drone arrays for distraction. Shields full, weapons hot. Let's remind them why humans never give up." Back on the Coalition. "Fleet!" Panic began to set in as the first Krayler warships opened fire. Energy beams tore through the void, slicing into hulls, exploding into brilliant showers of light. Eterna's pride shook violently, alarms blaring across the bridge. Alien pilots screamed as smaller ships were ripped apart, debris scattering into space. Lyra gritted her teeth. She had expected resistance, but the force of the Krayler assault was overwhelming. They had calculated that the Coalition would crumble in hours. She looked around at her crew, her officers, and her pilots, some of them young, some inexperienced in real combat. Their fear was palpable. "Commander, shields failing on Deck 4, a junior officer cried. "Hull breaches in multiple sectors." Lyra's mind raced. She had fought hard for the Coalition, negotiated alliances, and planned battles. But all her experience seemed useless against such a force. She felt the weight of her people's lives pressing down on her. And then, a strange pattern appeared on the sensors. Krayler ships began to behave erratically. Their formations faltered. One massive destroyer veered off course, as if distracted by something invisible. A laser salvo suddenly exploded harmlessly into empty space. Lyra's mandibles twitched. "What is happening?" The Krayler fleet suddenly found itself under coordinated attack. From the darkness beyond the gas giant, the human fleet had emerged. Their ships moved with deadly precision, weaving between enemy fire, striking from unexpected angles. Each human vessel seemed to anticipate Krayler tactics before the enemy could react. "Impossible," Zor whispered. They are too coordinated." Humans began disabling key Krayler ships with surgical strikes. Missile arrays exploded enemy engines, plasma beams tore through command modules, and boarding teams infiltrated capital ships to sabotage them from within. It was chaos, but chaos under control. Humans were not just fighting. They were orchestrating a masterpiece of destruction. On the Coalition flagship, Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. The humans were not only halting the enemy advance, they were giving her fleet a chance to regroup. For the first time in hours, hope sparked among her officers. She swallowed her skepticism and allowed herself a small nod of gratitude toward the unknown saviors. Meanwhile, humans on Resolute were focused, calm, and relentless. Elena Mercer coordinated the strike, issuing commands that flowed like water through her team. They were veterans. They had faced impossible odds countless times. Fear did not touch them. Exhaustion did not slow them. Every human knew their role, and each action brought the coalition closer to survival. "Prepare the ambush," Elena said. "We hit their command ships simultaneously. Timing is critical." The human ships split into small squadrons, darting around asteroids, nebulae, and the debris of earlier battles. They struck with a combination of speed, stealth, and calculated risk. A Krayler flagship exploded in a brilliant fireball, sending shockwaves through the enemy formation. Confusion spread. Enemy pilots screamed orders at sensors that no longer obeyed. Lyra watched, mesmerized. Humans, she realized, were unlike anything she had ever seen. They were fearless, intelligent, and resourceful in a way that no species she knew could match. The stories had been true. "Keep formation," Elena's voice echoed across the fleet. "We finish this together. No one falls behind." As humans advanced, alien ships followed their lead. The coalition fleet, once broken and demoralized, began to fight with renewed vigor. Krayler soldiers, trained to expect surrender, now faced enemies that refused to yield. Their confidence faltered as human tactics dismantled their rigid strategies. By the time the first wave of the Kraylar fleet was repelled, the coalition had stabilized its position. Ships that were moments ago on the brink of destruction floated, intact, shields flickering but operational. Alien pilots exchanged astonished looks. Lyra, still at the bridge of Eterna's Pride, allowed herself a smile for the first time in what felt like an eternity. "We may survive this," she whispered. "Perhaps not because of us, but because of them."